You might imagine that we would fight wars over that box because we have no way to agree about where to set the knobs. No global governance, and different people will have different places they want it set.
Solar engineering is like chemotherapy. No one wants it. But we all want the ability to do chemo and to understand its risks, should we find ourselves with dangerous cancer.
How long does it last up there?
The lifetimes are years.
What, years?
A couple years.
And then it what, precipitates out, or?
Yeah, that's correct.
No toxic side effects that we know of?
The thing we always wonder about is the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about, say, the acidification, it's clear that's not a problem. There's several studies that showed that.
Right.
But of course the concern here is with so little research, there may be some unknown that comes out of left field that bites us.
My name's Mike Murphy. I'm a filmmaker in from Los Angeles. We're covering an issue called geoengineering.
Okay, thanks guys.
Senator, a quick question about the issue of geoengineering.
I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about.
And wondering if you were supportive of geoengineers' proposals of spraying 10 to 20 million tons of aluminum into the atmosphere.
I should really get a briefing paper on it before you give an opinion.
Oh, not a problem. Are you aware of the issue?
Not completely.
At all? Because, okay. Do you have a letter from constituents, and people have concerns?
Yeah,
We're making a documentary about the
I don't know. You guys have credentials to be here?
Yes, yes, we do. We pass through security as well.
Endowed by our creator.
I think so.
Please don't touch me. Please don't touch my property.
You're lying.
No, why? What did we lie? What did we lie about, sir?
No, we're not.
What are we lying about? Lying about what?
It's a little unusual, huh?
I haven't heard that.
You're not aware of it? And it appears that these programs have already been deployed.
You know, I have to look at that proposal, and so, why don't you let me review it?
I can do that. Are you aware of?
Actually, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and get that. I will take a look at this, and I will act accordingly.
General, this program, this openly covert program of the aerosol spraying, stratospheric aerosol spraying, geoengineering, using tons of aluminum, spraying it up in the sky.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
Commonly called chemtrail, sir.
When you were the head of NEMA, did you see the aerosol trails?
Mike Murphy, filmmaker in Los Angeles.
Hi, sir.
And we're covering an issue called geoengineering, and wanted to know if you're supportive of geoengineers' proposals. Congressman?
Hey, Congressman.
I'm wondering if you're supportive of geoengineers' proposals, which is dumping 10 to 20 million tons of aluminum into the atmosphere. Pardon?
Okay.
Can you make an appointment for my office?
I'm not supportive. I haven't looked at it, so I don't.
Have you heard of the issue? Because it's becoming mainstream in public, and there are actually congressional committees which are being formed to talk about these programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think when we drop anything into the atmosphere, we should know prior to the effect of that, right?
Yes.
And if we don't have the knowledge as to what the effect will be, we shouldn't do it.
I think there are 4 different options for thinking about deployment of geoengineering. The first one would be we just ban it.
I would argue that one does not want to get too firm a restriction in place on small-scale studies early on because it'll tie the science hands. I think what the science community ought to be trying to do is say, you do small-scale stuff inside this space, and it's a scientific question what that space ought to be. There shouldn't be a lot of oversight and restriction.
Congressman? Excuse me. Hi, I'm Mike Murphy from Los Angeles, covering an issue called geoengineering. These guys are running from the geoengineering issue. I wonder why.
I'd have to talk to my staff. I don't know what your details on that are.
Have anyone made you aware of the issue, or? Sir?
Congressman, your committee talked about geoengineering last November. Are you in support of those proposals? I'd love to give you a paper.
Which?
Geoengineering? Or you know nothing about the geoengineering issue?
Never heard of it.
They call it geoengineering, but...
yeah, I never heard of it. It's nothing I've ever heard anything about.
When we looked up in the air today outside, you see we saw this stuff going on. Quickly, have you heard of geoengineering? No. The proposals to shoot 10 million tons of metals into the air. This committee, Science and Technology, covered it for the first time. No.
No, I've never heard of it.
So we were very concerned.
How you doing? I'm fine. So what?
We spoke with Congresswoman Watson's office, and her press secretary, Ms. White, was familiar with Representative Kucinich's Space Preservation Act, which mentioned chemtrails and the weaponization of the atmosphere in space, and then it was pressured to be taken off the bill. Did you see the aerosol spraying going on today over the Capitol?
Congressman?
Geoengineering carries with it a tremendous range of uncertainties, ethical and political concerns, and the potential for catastrophic environmental side effects.
He's not one to do interviews very often, so not as we usually really pressure him into it.
Okay.
So don't, all that is, don't hold your breath.
As chairman of the Committee of Jurisdiction, I feel a responsibility to begin a public dialogue and develop a record on geoengineering.
We want to know if you're supportive of their measures by spraying 10 to 20 million tons of aluminum into the atmosphere?
No, I think we need to have more research.
Okay. And about the issue of current deployment, there's literally a mountain of evidence that many people believe proves the deployment of these programs. Any knowledge of that?
No, there's certainly not a mountain of evidence. But I do support research into geoengineering, and I also support looking into the international governance of that.
Okay.
I hope anybody that has studied it knows, at least I think, that it's a radical proposal, and I hope we don't have to use it, but there may come that point in time where we do.
Now, if we could provide you with the evidence that suggests that these programs are and have been ongoing, would you be willing to address this publicly?
We've had about 3 or 4 hearings on it. We have addressed it publicly.
Well, not about the proposals, but about the current deployment of these programs. Citizens.
I don't support the current deployment. I think we need to have more research, and they have consequences that go beyond one nation. And so I think that there needs to be governance to that.
Governance is not simply an issue of deployment, but governance before deployment in terms particularly of large-scale scientific fieldwork.
I concede that on this subject and in general, it's not popular to talk about global rules.
And when these people started talking about the need for UN Security Council oversight, a supranational environmental security enforcement with a strong mandate by the UN, it really is clear that they're looking for a global power behind the manipulation of the environment.
But I do think it needs to be sort of an international kind of treaty that does tie and bind all nations into a common fate. It is a common fate.
And unfortunately, it's not just big governments that could do this. It is small governments. It is billionaires probably could figure, I'm going to save the world all by myself, and I won't bother to mention it.
How do we decide when there's a planetary emergency? Whose hand is on the thermostat? How do we decide when to start it? There's no way to do that right now. And what if we do start doing it, and then by some problem with the technology or with the will, that we can no longer do it? In a year or two, the aerosols will come out of the atmosphere and temperatures will shoot up at a rate much faster than it's going up now. And it's that rate of change that's hard for us to adapt to. So once we start it, we'll be sort of locked into doing it for a long, long time. And so that, and with basically no end in sight.
Boeing would pursue this to make a profit, right? I mean, there's financial motivation to do this.
Let's see. So let me not speak for Boeing.
Is that allowed? Okay.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
No, but someday, if the U.S. is going to decide to do this stuff, they're going to look to a company who can do it, and you want to be positioned. Boeing would rather get it than Lockheed Martin.
So certainly we have an industrial base that helps the country take on technologies and large-scale challenges like national defense. And we do that both for a profit motive as well as, I think, as a national service. So
I think it would be truly disastrous if, you know, we discovered a few years from now that there was a black program that some government had stood up to sort of learn on the quiet how to do this.
It's pretty clear you can cool the planet, but you will not and cannot bring it back to exactly the same climate state you started with. So you may or may not, and I expect we'll have a lot of back and forth about how useful it is to ameliorate the risks of climate change. I think there's a good evidence it probably is useful, but we don't know. But it certainly can't get you back to exactly the climate you started with. I think everybody agrees with that.
Do you think you'll see deployment in our lifetime?
Let me say I hope not.
Al?
I would agree. I hope not.
I hope
Very
not.
preached. Okay.
I see this as something like an evacuation plan. That you build big dikes. Maybe that's the emissions reduction to try to keep the flood from wiping you out. But that if that flood should come, that you'd like a plan for what to do in the event of that catastrophe. So I see these options more as a catastrophic response option and not as a way to reduce risk of everyday climate change.
You would advocate mitigating consumption of beef as a means of accomplishing your objective?
Yes.
How would you suggest going about that?
You can't. I don't add. I mean, it's your job to decide what to tax and what not to tax. Obviously, if you wanted people to behave differently, you give them incentives and disincentives for behavior. But
I'm sure that's the answer you wanted to hear, Mr. Smith.
If only my time had not expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Because there's literally aluminum and barium contamination found around the world, believed to be from these programs.
Like, look, today over the Capitol, looks like they're deploying some type of aerosol. Did you see it?
No, I didn't, but I can see you.
In a James Bond scenario, some rogue rich guy puts some airplanes in the air and seeds the clouds. What is to prevent that?
Okay, are you aware of the issue? You do it through the...
Are you in support of those proposals? What is your take?
I don't know anything about it.
You're not.
I have to get more information. I've got a chair here again.
Okay, we'll give you a letter on that. Yeah, this is a letter from constituents.
Okay, great.
Excellent. And many people believe that these programs have already been deployed because mass contamination has been found. Geoengineering programs, stratospheric.
Got it.
Yeah. Spraying from airplanes.
Okay.
So what is happening, people from around the world are finding contamination.
Let me take care of this and I'll talk to you when I come back. I'll be back. He's here.
Thank you very much.
We see that even though we might make the average temperature of the planet about right, the rainfall patterns change some from today. And some places become warmer and some places become cooler. So there are going to be winners and losers in this geoengineering activity if we were to do it. But nevertheless, as David has said, there are reasons why we might consider doing it.
Many people are deeply concerned about it because of the toxicity of aluminum, and it has been addressed to Congress in various committees. Would you take a look at a letter from some of your constituents addressing the concerns?
Excuse me if I go.
Okay. Can I give you a letter from constituents? Are you aware of their proposals of dumping? Gotcha. Thanks.
Well, I'm not familiar with it, so I don't know what they're doing.
Okay. Well, geoengineers are proposing just that, dumping aluminum and barium into the atmosphere.
Why would they do that? Aluminum's a precious metal we can use.
Well, the stated goal is to actually cool the planet. However, there's a...
Sounds strange.
Right, exactly. So they're proposing dumping these metals into the air to block the sun, essentially. We're here just to find out what members of Congress are
I hope
aware.
we would have a strong hearing on that before we decide to do
I would hope so. And there's plenty of evidence that not only suggests that these programs have been deployed, because we're finding contamination of aluminum and barium on the rain, snow, and soil.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
LA County has seen 200% increase of Alzheimer's over the last decade. Tons of ground and water samples showing high levels of aluminum all around our state.
Why don't you give me all the information you have? I have some very good people I will assign it to. And if you get it to Mr. Lavelle, we will
He's
get
got
it
my
to
card
the
and
right...
send me an email and
yeah.
we'll
Sounds
Okay, we'll be in touch. We are investigating this, and there's literally a mountain of evidence that suggests that these